Check. Good. So I'm Max Ceron. Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding Podcast. Podcast. Today we have a really cool guest. Welding Podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and once again, we have another fantastic and very interesting Canadian guest on the show today. We have Matt Crimi from Canada Welding Supply. Now, many Canadians here know about Canada Welding Supply because they're one of the primo retailers for like high-end brands and really, really cool products in the welding world. Matt, how's it going?
Not too bad, Max. How are you?
I'm doing really good, man. Really good. We are just talking about how crazy it is post-Christmas at work. So I feel like a gerbil on a wheel right now, but
Yeah, you take a day off and then you got to work an extra 4 hours for a couple nights to make up for each day you take off.
yeah, it's an interesting concept, time off, because like you don't like the amount of work you got to do per week is just what it is. So whether you're there or not, you still got to do it. So
Yeah, nothing changes there.
yeah, nothing changes. It's not like whether you're there or not. It's like the world stops spinning or something. Like it still keeps happening.
Exactly.
So, in my dealings in the welding world, I've known about your website. I've bought from your website. I have an account, and then with the association, we have a partnership with you guys. But at the end of the day, Matt, we want to get back to on this story for this show. I want to talk about where you came from and how the heck you got to there. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
I mean, because that's not an easy story and that's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of big competitors out there, and that would be an interesting market to try to get a pry bar in and start working your way into it. So. Let's start with where you're from. You're in Ontario. Your last name Crimi. We were just talking about your Sicilian descent, which is south of Italy. So the dark hair, the curly hair, it all makes sense, right? Now, were you born here in Canada? Your grandparents came, or what's your family history?
Yeah, that's correct. My grandparents came in the 60s, and I was born here. I was born in Toronto, but grew up in Orangeville, so just a little bit northwest of the city.
And what'd your parents do?
So my mom was a school teacher, and she also owned a dance studio. And then my dad was a chemical engineer.
A chemical engineer. So I'm thinking Breaking Bad. No.
Not that I knew of, anyway.
and a dance instructor and teacher. Man, that sounds awesome. Like, so you must know how to dance.
You know what? I never picked it up. That was
Really?
my sister. Yeah, I tried. I did. I was forced into some dance lessons when I was young, but it just was never my thing. I don't know. I just never had that bone in my body, but definitely grew up around it. That's for sure.
Yeah, all the Latino men right now in the world are like, "Oh, Matt, come on."
I know.
So you grew up in Orangeville, you said. I don't know much about the Ontario area, so was that a nice neighborhood? Is it a good place to grow up? What was your life as a kid like?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, when I was growing up there, it was a really small town. It's grown a lot since then, and we moved out of that area in the late 90s. But my cousin has a farm kind of in that area, so I got to spend a lot of time on the farm. That's where I learned to weld. So it was a good spot to grow up, kind of in the country, but still have access to a lot of daily necessities as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that sounds cool. And then you moved out in the 90s. That's like kind of like when you were a teenager. How old were you when you guys moved?
Yeah, I was young. I would have been like 10 years old or something. We moved to another town called Nobleton, again, north of the city. Similar type of, kind of country town, just
Vibe.
outside, yeah, exactly.
And what was your, at 10 years old, what was your dream? What picture did you have on your wall? What was it that you wanted to grow up and be?
Kind of an odd thing. I wanted to own a paving company. I'd see all the machines on the side of the road, and I was like, I'm going to own a paving company one day.
Hey man, that's big money in paving.
Absolutely.
I knew a guy from Ethiopia, Eritrea actually. His name was Matthew, and he was a machinist at a shop when I was young. Really nice guy, super like a fresh immigrant, and he married this Ukrainian girl here in Canada. And his dream was to own a. People laughed at him, but his dream was to own a gravel truck. He just always wanted to buy like a brand new giant, like 5-ton gravel truck. And so he went and got one at an auction, and everyone's like, "What are you gonna do with a gravel?" So he started putting in tenders for hauling gravel and garbage and whatever. Start picking up work. I ran into him last year, so this is like 15 years later. He owns 50 some trucks, and he's living like in a $4 million house. Like it's like,
Insane.
yeah, just hauling gravel. Like I
Yeah.
mean, dude, like I mean, it's nothing's dumb if you do it well, right?
And that's exactly it. I know so many entrepreneurs that have successful businesses doing the simplest thing sometimes, and you just kind of shake your head and said, you know what, anyone could have done that, just no one thought to do it.
Yeah, he put himself in debt, 40 grand for some used truck, and there you go. Go with
Yep,
it, right? Like,
exactly. Worked hard, and that's it.
yeah,
Focus,
yeah.
and that's it.
So, you wanted to be a in the paving industry, which is, elite. And you went to high school. What was your high school like strengths? Were you like a jock? Were you academic? Were you musician? Were you a gigolo? I don't know. Like, what?
I'd say it was a mix of I played quite a few sports, and I did have good grades, although I didn't particularly enjoy learning and being in school.
Hmm.
With my parents both having their university degrees and just with the general trend to go to university, that's what I was more or less on that path. And I was still very interested in construction. So I was thinking probably about maybe being an architect or some type of
Hmm.
engineer, something along those lines. Um, and then it was a shop class. My teacher there was a retired contractor. He had owned a business for a number of years, and then his like retirement plan was to teach high school for a few years and then kind of retire with his high school pension.
Hmm.
And starting to hear the stories of what he had accomplished financially in his life got me thinking a little bit about the trades. He had
Hmm.
a cottage, he had an airplane, he had a boat, he had snowmobiles, and my parents did well for themselves, but they didn't have all those toys. So started thinking a little bit about the trades, and that's what kind of got my eye on that and looking into it a bit more.
So then you're coming home from high school in grade 12, and you're telling your mom and dad, I'm kind of looking at the trades. What are their thoughts? You said they're both university educated. And my parents were saying my parents were basically both tradesmen. My mom got her degree way later in life, but as a kid growing up, they both were in the trades, and they did not want me to go in the trades at all. There's like, you go to university, that's what you got to do. That's the smart play. So, when you started thinking about the trades, did you tell them, or did you keep that to yourself, or what was going on there?
Yeah, I don't think it came as a big surprise because I was always mechanically inclined and always enjoyed, that kind of thing. But they were definitely skeptical about it. They had zero knowledge of it. They knew a few people. In fact, we had a friend with an HVAC business, which is really how I got my foot into the trades. But they themselves had no experience with it. They're definitely thinking about the danger of, working with machinery on construction sites, and certainly skeptical about the idea when I presented it to them.
And then when you finished high school, did you go to university?
I actually did not. What I did was that friend of ours offered for me to do co-op with him. So my last semester of high school, I did full-time co-op and got my last semester credits working full-time, which was excellent because it was the opportunity I needed to say, yeah, this is 100% what I want to do.
And HVAC's interesting. You work with a lot of different things, right? There's a lot of different aspects of the HVAC business. My son's going into that right now, and he was like, "Oh, did you want me to be a welder?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, man. Roll with HVAC. That looks cool. I wish I knew how to do that stuff."
And that's what my neighbor sold it to me because when I was in high school, I think the first trade that like you think of if you want to get into the trade is electrician. Like everyone's like, oh, I'll be an electrician. So that's what when I was talking to this family friend of ours, that's what I had kind of discussed with him, and he said, well, why
Mhm.
don't you do HVAC? You learn electrical, you learn plumbing, you learn sheet metal, learn gas, the list goes on and on. And brazing, welding, like these are parts of the industry as well. So you can go so many directions with it. If you find that you only like the electrical, then from there you can go ahead and be an electrician. It's easy to transition, but in that trade you kind of get experience with a lot of different areas.
Now, one of the things I've heard about HVAC that people generally don't like is that it's pretty much all on the road. It's all travel work. Like there's really not a shop for HVAC. I mean, maybe a small shop for some like, bigger repair or outside repairs, but generally it's a load in, fix and replace, right? So did you like that aspect of it or
Yeah,
not? Yeah.
for me that was something that was interesting. That's exactly it. That first company I worked for, his house was his office. He had 3 trucks that he parked in his driveway. One guy took his truck home at night. I would go there in the morning and pick up the truck, and we'd go from there. So you don't even necessarily need a shop if you're small. And then some of the bigger companies will have a shop, but again, it's usually just storage. They might have a couple guys tearing down some stuff and rebuilding certain things, but most of it, 95% of it's on the road.
And then, how long did you do that for? Did you start thinking about, I'm getting like, some tickets in this? Because there's a lot of different certifications you can there. Did you write it out for a long time or how long
Yeah,
did you do it for?
I did a lot with it actually. So coming out of high school, that guy I had done the co-op with convinced me that college was a good idea, or some type of post-secondary education was good, especially in this trade, because there's a lot of technical background that you need to learn, and it's very difficult to learn it on the job, especially when, like I said, you're on the road all the time, and after usually your first year, you're by yourself from that point on. So you don't even have really somebody over your shoulder very much. So I did the 2-year pre-apprenticeship program at George Brown College. That's in Toronto. And you graduate with your gas fitter ticket. So basically, that's your license to work on gas-fired equipment up to 400,000 BTU, so a certain input size. And from there, you try to get yourself an apprenticeship. So the way it works in HVAC is kind of weird. You can get that gas fitter license and you're licensed to work on gas-fired equipment. But a big part of the industry, of course, is the air conditioning and refrigeration side of it. And that is the 5-year apprenticeship where you get your journeyman ticket. You get your ticket in refrigeration, not in like heating and air conditioning per se.
So for the lesson, because this is actually something I used to teach, and you can be the teacher now. What is a BTU for the people listening? And if they hear that, you see it on barbecues, you see it on things. What's a BTU, and what does it mean?
The British thermal unit, and it's a way of measuring the heat capacity of something. So I think 12,000 BTUs would be, well, that would be refrigeration. So in refrigeration, things are sized by tons. So 12,000 BTU would be 1 ton. But basically, yeah, it's the amount of heat input or output something is capable of, and a unit of measurement.
Yeah, it's good. It's one that comes up when we talk about, a propane torch versus an acetylene torch.
Yes.
They have different heats, but the BTUs is important. Like they have different purposes, not so much because of the heats, but because of the BTUs, which is how much they can heat up in a volume of area, right? So
Exactly.
So you're rolling HVAC, you're loving it. Sounds like it was all good. How long did you do that for?
So I did. I worked for a company after college. I worked for a company for about 4 years. They registered me as an apprentice. They specialized in industrial HVAC, so we were doing a lot of boiler work, makeup air systems, larger air conditioning systems for like plants and factories. And I was enjoying that quite a bit. But I was really interested in like the serious refrigeration side of it. In the industry, a lot of companies will do refrigeration or they'll do HVAC. It's usually split. There's a bit of crossover, but I was really curious about these companies that specialize in refrigeration only. And being at that 3rd, 4th year apprenticeship point, it was like, okay, I'm either going to just stick with what I'm doing or I need to switch companies because once I'm fully licensed, then I'll be too expensive to retrain in a different part of the industry. So I started looking around at different companies, different options, and I got an opportunity with one company that was not just a service company, but they also manufactured equipment. They designed, engineered, and manufactured equipment. The only thing was the opportunity was starting from the bottom in the shop.
Oh,
So I'd be going from, I was making almost $30 an hour at a company vehicle to like $14 an hour. Um, so I lived at home, and the money wasn't, that big of a deal at the time.
that
So I said,
critical.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, let me take this opportunity and just see where it goes, right? It was really hard to get your foot in the door with these companies, and I was interested in this opportunity. And
Mhm.
for me, it was the best decision I ever made. So that's working in that shop was the first opportunity I had to work in a CWB certified welding shop. These guys were doing
Fabrication, jigs, engineers,
fabrication,
the whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, piping. They had, everything was pressure tested. A lot of the equipment they did was X-ray tested. So just being exposed to that world just kind of opened my eyes to, a whole other side of welding that, I was from the farm equipment repair side, kind of hobbyist side. That was my experience. And then of course brazing, I did a lot of that as HVAC technician, but I'd never seen welding on that level
Yeah,
before.
brazing's
And
like
that,
900 degrees. 900 degrees is like baby heat, you know?
yeah, exactly,
That doesn't count.
exactly. No, no, exactly. And you don't need a whole lot of equipment to do it properly. And
No, no.
so,
Some map gas and the black bottle from Canadian Tire.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, where did you go to school for your apprenticeship for your HVAC or your refrigeration?
So I did it through George Brown, um, just because they also do the apprenticeship program as well, which
Hmm.
is so like the pre-apprenticeship program was a college diploma, but the schooling for the apprenticeship was similar to other trades where it was through the province, but
Okay.
also done at George Brown College.
Okay. So you were in your third to fourth year when you switched. Did you finish and get your red seal?
Yeah, so I had to kind of take a bit of a step back in
Hmm.
my apprenticeship for a bit of time, but then because that company they had the fabrication and side of the business, but then they also had their service side of the business. They were able to once I kind of proved myself in the shop, they were able to bring me into the service division, and I was able just to continue on my apprenticeship
Finish your
where I
hours.
left off. Yeah, exactly, and I got my license with them, and then I was a journeyman for about 7 years with them after that. So I was with them for quite a while.
Okay, so now you're coming up on your late 20s, early 30s. You're
Hmm.
working with this company. They sounds like they do really cool stuff. Did you start looking at welding or fitting or fabricating or engineering? Like this sounds like this company did a whole bunch of different things. Were you looking to maybe expand into some of these other areas?
Not so much. What was going on with myself at the time is because this company was so specialized, we did a lot of international work. They sell their equipment around the world, and I was part of the team that would do a lot of travel work. So I'd be like kind of you name it, mostly North America, but been to China, been to Mexico, been to a few other countries, and so I spent a lot of time in airports and hotels, and as absolutely loved it. Some of the places I've been to one of the world's largest shipyards in China. I've been to the oil fields in North Dakota, Western Canada, and the Arctic in Alaska. Um, Food processing plants, auto manufacturing plants. The list kind of goes on. I've been
Very
to
cool.
a lot of cool places with them, but at the same time, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life, living on the road kind of thing, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So it was kind of at that point where, and kind of going back to when I was young and I always wanted to own my own business. That was still something that was always in my mind. So just throughout the years, I've always been thinking about what kind of business I might want to own one day, what opportunities might be there for me, and something that would be my kind of go-to once I was done with the travel work. So
Hmm.
and then yeah, to answer your question, fabrication was really interesting to me. I was looking actually at a couple businesses, one that did like stairs and railings, another one that did food processing equipment. Like the owners were getting old and retiring and looking to sell their businesses, and I was just kind of poking around at the idea of what it would be like to be involved with possibly owning one of those businesses at some point in time. But at that point, it was just an idea. I was
Hmm.
still kind of a little young and not quite at the point to make a move like that.
It sounds like you're like easily, I'd say 2.5 to 2 3/4 times smarter than I am. Because like I just like jumped into business as a moron when I was like 24 for my first one, and it was just like a crash and burn. It was like I just lit a match on my life and like try that again. And like I was like, oh, I'll just try again. And then it took me a few times. Sounds like you took a very calm and reasonable approach to your entrepreneurial spirit, which I commend. Because honestly, I think there's more people like me than like you when it comes to entrepreneurship, and people will jump in with both feet and make huge mistakes and lose all their money, which I have done a couple times, and I and I had kids in tow and stuff, and I was like, that's probably not. People must have been looking at me being like, "What are you doing, dude? Like, just go weld, like shut up." But
Yeah.
if you got it in you to own something, it's hard to shake that. It's hard to shake that entrepreneurial thought.
Yeah, and it would go all the way back to growing up with my parents running the dance business,
Mm.
and seeing the struggles and pains that they went through, but also the good moments as well,
And
and
the
just
the pride and joy.
yeah, trying to learn from their mistakes because they made many, but also learn from like the great things they did because they
Hmm.
were quite successful with it, especially towards the end of it. So that's exactly it. And then I did, when I was apprenticing, when I was kind of young in my early 20s, I did have a little side business
The
doing
hustle.
furnaces and stuff for, yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So I had a little bit of experience too. Like I had a business number and,
Hmm.
realized that like, you need an accountant to do certain things. And then you kind of also see too that like it almost, you have to be of a certain size to make it worth it as well.
Hmm.
So when I was doing the side stuff, like it was great, but and I probably should have just kept it like as a cash thing. But as soon as you like take that step pat beyond like little cash jobs here and there, you kind of gotta start to have a plan in place that I'm gonna go all in with this thing because insurance and paying for services like an accountant starts to add up, and if you're not doing enough work to make it worthwhile, then you're kind of wasting your time.
Yeah, the day you decide to hire staff is a hard day, because that's when you're like, okay, now I actually am responsible for other people's lives, because people depend on paychecks, and you can't take that lightly. And if you're gonna hire someone, you better know, because like the worst feeling is getting rid of somebody, not because they're not talented enough, but because you can't afford to pay them. That's not a good feeling. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like that.
exactly.
That's you feel really guilty from doing that, and that's a lot of level of responsibility. It's like, okay, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and even some things I never thought about, like advertising. Holy man, is advertising expensive? Like
Crazy.
unreal. I remember the first time I did a radio ad spot. Oh man, my head exploded. This lady came down from the radio station. We're gonna do this for you. We're gonna do this for you. Well, then we do the recording. Tell us the message. We'll make it fun. What's your vibe? Blah blah blah. And you get all excited, and you're gonna be on the radio. Then I spent like 9 grand to get a 30-second commercial put on 3 times, and
Yeah,
that's it.
and it was probably a really small radio station too. It wasn't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
one of
Like
the
no,
main ones.
no. I was like, That's it. And they're like, well, if you want more, we can do another contract. And I was like, what? I could have gotten 30,000 flyers and just throw them on the street and probably gotten more business out of that, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it's funny because now I think about those lessons as I learned as a small business, coming into work for a company like CWB, being like, I don't want to forget the little guys. Like when we just redid our media kit. This some shameless plug on my part. Sorry for the listeners, but we're redoing this media kit. And it's like, okay, everything can't be big. We need small. You need to have stuff that mom and pop can roll in. And I got $200. What can that get me? I'll get you some. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you got to have that ability to offer support to all levels of industry, because not everyone's a big player. There's lots of
Yeah.
small players out there, and they got dreams too, and you got to help them, right?
And they play a big part in everything too, right? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
all of the small shops and even small suppliers out there, like they are serving their group of people and are very important to their customers. So, just like you said, it all kind of works together to make this whole thing roll.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a good moment to take a break. We're gonna take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back. Because right now it sounds like you're about to make your big switch over to trying to start a business, and I think this is where the second half of the show should take that lead. So if you've been tuning in, thanks a lot for listening. We'll be right back after the short commercial break here on the CWB Association podcast. And we're back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and I got Matt Crimi here from Canada Welding Supply.ca. We're just recapping the life story, the life and times of Matt, and coming up to the point where he's thinking about making the jump. He's had a sounds like a successful and fun career doing HVAC and refrigeration work, couple cool companies, lots of fun travel, got to do a lot of real cool stuff, but you got this bug in your ear that says you want to start something. What was it that you went out to find? What was that process like? As you know, you're working full time, but you're thinking about starting a business. How did you approach that?
Um, Honestly, just research.
Hmm.
Listening to a lot of podcasts, just trying to understand different perspectives from leaders in the business world on, what their thoughts are on starting businesses, what businesses look like to them, and just different ways you can approach it. So I knew that it didn't necessarily have to be something I had much experience in. I was really open to the idea of doing something that I didn't have experience in because from what I learned and what I do believe in is as an entrepreneur, you don't necessarily need to be the expert at the particular job. You need to hire the experts and give them the tools to do their job well. And then you need to have the vision for where you want to see this idea of yours go. So I was pretty open to a lot of different ideas of what this could be. I knew for me it had to be something that I was passionate about and interested in for sure, because you can make money doing pretty much anything in this world.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
endless opportunities, but if you're in business for yourself, you're eating, sleeping, and breathing it. So you better be doing something that you don't mind thinking about around the clock.
All the time.
Exactly. And then, so really, what sparked the idea for us is the local welding supplier that I used to go to. He retired and put his business up for sale. And so I was kind of in that process of looking at businesses, and then this came along, and um, that particular opportunity wasn't really right for me, but it got me thinking about the welding industry from the supply
Hmm.
point of view, and realized that there was like a ton of amazing products on the market for welders that were really hard to find, really hard to get. I had experience myself from ordering products from the US, and typically a nightmare, especially if
Hmm.
you need to return something, or if it's like a small item, it can be, you pay more for shipping than actually what the product's worth. Um, so
And
I
if
was
it's big, the logistics suck. Yeah.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of going over the idea with my wife, and who's my business partner, and she was the one who said, "Well, could you do an online business for this type of thing?" And I thought like, nah, I don't know. I don't think welders really shop online. That's not really like the way it's done normally. I don't know if it'd work. But we're a couple really big online retailers in the U.S., CyberWeld and a couple others, ArcZone, for example,
Hmm.
who are doing it quite successfully. There wasn't a whole lot for the Canadian market though, and so we started to think, well, okay, well maybe this could work potentially. So we started just putting the pieces together on how we would do it, and we started really slow, just like you said, or like we talked about earlier in the podcast of you could jump all in and lose everything. We really didn't know if this idea would work and if this would be of something that would Canadian consumer would be interested in. So we started really slow. We actually started with an Amazon store. Um, we realized really quickly that that wasn't going to be the right approach,
Hmm.
because what I think our market needed was someone they could like really trust in, and then also a place where there's technical knowledge and really good customer service as well, which you don't get that through an Amazon store. We knew we kind of had to build our own brand and be able to provide that to the customers. So we started building a website in late 2017, and in 2018 it was still a side hustle at that point until we kind of reached that point where most entrepreneurs do with something that's starting to pick up a little bit, where you got to make a decision on, are we going all in on this or are we calling it quits?
Mm-hmm.
So what we decided to do was, my wife at the time was working for one of Canada's, largest corporations. So she had a lot of business experience, like business operation experience. But because she was so busy with her job, she had very limited time that she could put into the business. And with me working in the trades, especially traveling a lot, I was in airports and hotels all the time. I had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
flexibility with my time. So we decided that she would be the one to quit her job and start running the business
Manage.
full
Yeah.
time. Yeah, exactly. And for about a year, it was just her. I would help her with technical support and that kind of stuff. And she'd take orders and pack them and ship them every day. And within early 2019 is when we moved into a larger warehouse and hired our first employee.
So I want to take a step back here to the inception time. As you're doing your research and you're looking at the Canadian market for setting up your company as an online retailer. And I when I one of my companies that I had, we had an online presence, which is a whole I had to hire like a whole other people to do that, because I was like, I'll just get the guys in the shop to run the online store. No, that's not a thing. Like there needs to be someone there all the time, because if that chat bubble or that help doesn't happen immediately, they're just going to go to the next website, like 100%, and fair and rightly so, right? Um, but like I found that some of the issues I had with maintaining online was stock, because you got to put a lot of faith in your suppliers, because when you're a store, like a front facing storefront, people come in, you'll have a demo model, they'll be like, I want that, but that's not the right one. You go to the catalog, you pick something out, you tell them 2 to 3 weeks, I'll order it. If it shows up another week later, okay, it is. You have like a different relationship. When you go online and you click buy, you want a tracking number like within 20 minutes, or else you start feeling like you got ripped off. You know what I mean? And like, even for people that own online stores, like even for yourself, if you go to Amazon tomorrow and order a book and it doesn't give you the tracking number in an hour, you're like, what happened? Right? Like, I mean, it's just something you can't shake. There's a level of trust that exists online. How did you start picking suppliers? How did you start picking the companies you want to work with, that you wanted to be a part of your brand? Because there's so many, and they're all different sizes, so you can, are you going to partner up with like an Acklands or an Air Liquide and maybe do some of the same stuff, or are they just like off the table because they're direct competitors and you're going to look for smaller market items, or maybe a little bit of both? You'll, because I mean, you can't get away from Miller and Lincoln maybe, but are you going to be looking for Everlasts and Proform, like different companies? Sorry, that was like 10 questions in one there. Sorry. I just started rambling there trying to think it through myself, right? It's a
Yeah,
huge,
yeah.
it's a huge question. How did you approach that?
It was you touched on it when you were going through examples, and the big one for us was there's already some huge players doing this, and not even to mention the legitimate welding suppliers. You got like the Home Depots and stuff that are selling certain welding supplies as well.
Princess Auto, yeah.
This auto, like we have no
Yeah.
chance in competing against them on those products. So our focus was, okay, what are the products that you cannot get on those store shelves? Let's focus
Hmm.
on those because there's nowhere else to go for them. And if we have them, then we're going to start bringing in customers because they can't find these products anywhere else. And that's kind of like our foot into the market. And that's still something we specialize in. We're always looking for new products that people are struggling to find, and we want to make it easy for them to get their hands on them.
Now, when you were looking at these products, were you looking in Canada or US or both?
Everywhere, anywhere that someone was making something cool that could help our customers out. We were interested and wanted to know more about it.
And in the beginning stages, when customers would order from you, like you start creating some loyal customers. And those first loyal customers are sometimes the best customers you ever have, because they also give you ideas. Did you find that they would be like, "Hey, can you get this?" And you'd be like, "Well, let me look into it and see if you could set up that deal."
Exactly, and it's amazing that like to this day is still the case. I think we have something like 14,000 SKUs in our system right now, and somehow there's always like another product that someone's looking for that we don't have. So it's exactly it. It's listen to the customer. What are they looking for? What can they not find anywhere else? And let's see what we can do for them.
Now, as you start becoming more involved with your store and the products rolling through it, did you start developing an interest or a deeper interest yourself into welding? Like, because you're not a welder, certified or I would say career welder, but you own, one of the coolest welding supply shops in North America. So, you know, did you come to love welding? Do you follow welding news now? Do you follow welding influencers? Like, has it become a part of your life, or is this just a business that you're really trying to love and support, or a little bit of
Uh,
both, I guess.
yeah, I'd say a little bit of both. I'd say before, I grew up with watching a lot of. I've always loved automotive industry, so I grew up watching like the Jesse James and Chip Foose shows, and so from that aspect, I always loved welding. I
Hmm.
like TIG welding on automotive has always been a thing that you just hard to fall in love with. Hard not to love the welds you see it on a roll cage or a cool
Hmm.
intercooler system or exhaust system on some sort of hot rod or supercar. So I always kind of loved it from that perspective. And then definitely with the business, starting to learn more of the technical side of it is been really fascinating and interesting too. And just like you said, like we're on Instagram. I'm flipping through that every single day, and it's because I enjoy it. It's not, oh, I got to go on Instagram and see what people are up to because it wouldn't work. It honestly,
Yeah.
you would never pick up the phone if you weren't and look at that if you genuinely weren't interested in it. And even like the welding industry as a whole, there's so much content in the industry. Like there's all the vendors have different like product release information. There's all sorts of trade shows. Like it's overwhelming how much information there is in the industry.
Hmm.
And if you're not actually interested in it, it's going to be very easy to just kind of block it all out. So I think it definitely takes a genuine interest, and I'd say yeah, it's grown, certainly grown over the years since we started the business.
And what about your wife? How much does she know about welding? Sounds like she did
More,
most of the heavy lifting. So.
yeah, she'll surprise you. Like she certainly isn't, you know, listening to the podcast like I do or anything like that. But just from being around it for so many years, she has a lot of
Hmm.
knowledge, specifically on the products and you know quantities and where they come from and how hard they are to get and all that kind of stuff.
That chipping hammer was made in southeastern Malaysia. Did you know? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
well, that's cool. She'd probably be awesome for trivia. So
Yeah, exactly.
now, I'm looking at the timelines: 2017 inception, 2018 web development, 2019 really start rolling, move into a bigger warehouse, and things are trending up how you want them to go with business. You hire your first staff. This is now not a hustle. This is not a hustle anymore. This is full-time job. And 2019, man, like you're rolling into coronavirus time here, and this hits. But for an online business, I'm sure you must have been thinking, and tell me if I'm dead wrong, but I think that if I was in your shoes, I'd have been thinking, this might be our time to shine. We don't have the footprint that some of these other companies have physically, which as soon as coronavirus hit, that's just dead weight. And you live in a space, you've established yourself as a trusted brand online, which is where everything is going as soon as it started. How did you feel aside from remove yourself from the fear of the virus, but how did you feel about your economic or business state when this started happening? What were your thoughts about, like, what's going to happen to my company?
March and April, we were nervous because that's when things were very unclear, and I was like certain that the economy was just going to fall through the bottom, and like nobody would have any money, and
Everything's
everything
on
was
fire. Yeah.
yeah. So that was a couple interesting months, but we knew that we were nimble and able to adapt to whatever we needed. We were back then was as to when the term essential business became a thing that no one had
Hmm.
probably ever heard of before. And I always knew even when we started the business that like being an industrial was pretty
Yeah.
safe.
Trades never
Um,
stop. Never stop.
no, when I was going through high school and getting into the trades was 2008, 2009, 2010, during the financial crisis, and I graduated school on a Friday and had a job on the Monday. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew that, our industry, being an industrial industry, although it can go through ups and downs and there can be some tough times, I knew that, there's always, welding, everything's welded. So one way or another, there's going to be business and there's going to be opportunities. So yeah, it shifted from a little bit of concern and fear to, okay, what do we got to do now to adapt to this, and what can we do to do our best in this environment? And one thing that a lot of industrial companies did was they shifted to being like PPE suppliers, and we were tempted into that a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
what I kind of saw was that at some point this is going to end, and PPE is one of those things like masks and all that stuff. You can get that, and hand sanitizer. You can get that anywhere. You can get that at Walmart. Why are we going to
Mm-hmm.
go into that? So we actually doubled down on being a welding
Welding.
supplier, and
Yeah.
we invested in bringing in more products and more brands, and I think we've done really well for that reason, that we've stuck to like what we do. And the other thing that a lot of businesses did was they kind of leaned out their inventory. They didn't want to be stuck with things, where we kind of saw the opposite. Said, let's invest as much as we can in inventory, because who knows like what kind of shortages we're going to see here, and let's try our best to stay ahead of that curve as well.
And did you find that paid off, having that inventory? Because right now there is supply shortages. Like, try to buy a doorknob right now, or it's tricky to get anything. And some things seem like, why would that be hard to get? But you don't know. Did that purchasing or extra buying power really pay off for you guys?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And it's still it seems like it's getting harder and harder, but it's something that we're doing our best to stay ahead of, because it's just going to be part of the challenge of business over the next few years.
hmm Now, in terms of the brands that you stock and that you bring in, what's the process that you guys use? Like, and we talked a little bit about people recommending, but you also must be trying to find the trends on your own, kind of ahead. How do you try to guess what the next trend is, or what the next product is, or some products are cool but they're $10, some products are cool but they're $10,000. How do you know which one you want to dip into? Like, how do you figure that out?
A lot of it comes down to kind of what we were talking about earlier too, just having like your nose in the industry. Podcasts are great because people are always talking about their problems and what they're doing to solve them. A lot of our one thing that's really key for us is we work direct with a lot of the vendors. So when they have new products coming along, they're telling us about them early, so that we can kind of prepare
Mm-hmm.
and understand like how this new product is going to, you know, save time or money for the customer. It's great to come up with a new idea, but is this actually going to be useful for our customer? And if it is, we work to understand, exactly how this product needs to be sold to the customer, so that they understand, why it costs more or less than something they've been using in the past, and why it's going to be better for them. So it's a mix, definitely, of different ways we kind of keep an eye on those trends that are coming through.
And your clientele, you're an online company, so it's not really you know critical where you are, because you can kind of operate out of anywhere. But where do you see most of your clientele coming from? Or do you see it mostly Ontario, or is it very evenly spread across Canada or even North America in terms of what you sell?
I'd say percentage wise, it's pretty evenly spread out. Certainly Ontario, just being the size of the market that it is,
hmm
generally most of our business is done in Ontario. But if you looked at it on a percentage of sales wise, it's pretty evenly spread across the country.
Yeah, and in terms of like big ticket items, do you find that went up or down, as the pandemic kind of evolved? I've seen a lot of people just personally buying welders in the last 6 months, being like, okay, pandemic's kind of thinning out, but I've spent a lot of time at home. I want to upgrade my home welder. Like, I bought another welder over the pandemic, just because I want to get another welder, something to play with while I'm on lockdown. Did you guys have quite a bit of that happen?
Yeah, I'd say that during like the depths of the lockdowns and stuff, you had a lot more hobbyists that were like, okay, I'm off work for a few weeks. I want something to do. So you'd see a lot of those like entry level machines selling, and
Hmm.
maybe a lot less of those larger $10,000 machines that the large businesses would be purchasing. But there's definitely been certain businesses who've done very well. They might be making products that are helping the solve this situation that we're in, or maybe they're in food processing. Like a lot of food processing companies have done very well.
Hmm.
So it's kind of been a mix. But I'd certainly say during the lockdowns, we were selling a lot of those entry level machines for sure.
What are some of your best selling products? And you don't have to give me the brand necessarily, but just curious. Like if you could say that the five things that roll through your website like every day, like magic. The things that if they ever drop, you're like, what? Why aren't we selling those anymore? Like, like because there are those things that just for some reason always sell. What would you say is like your top five products that are rolling through your website?
I'd say that small packaging filler metals people really like because again you get to the hobbyists who
Hmm.
they don't need like a 40-pound spool of MIG wire, or they don't need a 10-pound pack of TIG rod. So
Yeah.
we get a lot of hobbyists and kind of coming in to buy like the 1-pounders of stuff. I'd say that welding helmets, like it's amazing how many welding helmets this world needs.
Just don't, well, you wreck them, right?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't even know how many I've gone through, and I probably have, I'd say safely seven welding helmets in my house right now,
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly. And it's crazy too. I think some welders they just like they got to have like three or four because it's hard to even pick one. So I think they'll get one and they like it, but they're like, "Oh, I'm looking at that one. I think I got to try that one out too."
That's 100% me, man. Or this is my TIG helmet.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is my stick helmet. This is for my when I go on site because it's got the clips for the hard hat. Like like you kind of have it's like clothes, right? This is like for the party. This one's for the ball. This one's for. So I'm that guy. So I'm terrible. I'm terrible. But
But it's
and
it's
what
one of
else?
and if you're welding every day, I mean
Yeah.
it's what you spend your money on, right? So it's totally understandable. I'd say a lot of like generally the TIG welding category is a big one. And I'd say it's mostly just because there is so many products for TIG welding. Like if you look at stick welding, it's like, okay, give me a stinger and some electrodes and I'm done. I'm off to
I'm
the
going to
races.
town. Yeah.
But in TIG
Four
welding,
four inch, 4 inch or 6 inch stinger. That's it.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's it. And you can make whatever work anyway. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
I only got a 200 amp electrode holder today. Okay, whatever. I'll make it work type of thing, right?
Yeah, because like
But
how often are you turning up your machine over 200 anyways, really?
exactly,
Never.
exactly. So that's like it's such a simple category,
Mm-hmm.
but TIG welding, I mean, it's just endless um the different directions you can go depending on the work you're doing. So generally we sell a ton of TIG products. Um, consumables for torches, different types of torches, accessories for purging,
Mm-hmm.
positioners. It
Like
goes
purge
on and on.
dams and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
So, and it's interesting because when I think of your shop, Canada Welding Supply, I think of TIG. Honestly, that's generally what I think of. That's where I got my CK Worldwide kit. That's where I've gotten a few of my TIG items is from your guys because it was like definitely those items I couldn't find anywhere else. Like I could go to Ackland's or somewhere, and yeah, the stingers, the rods, the whatever, like your generic field work stuff, shop work stuff. 100%, they got it, and they probably buy it in such large numbers that you probably would hard for you to compete with the prices. But when it comes to TIG, you go to your normal reseller, and really, it's very limited options. And TIG has got something else that I think MIG's getting there a little bit. Stick, it's not even there at all. But there's a little bit of branding and flair and coolness. Like you look at some of the new MF cups, they're like cool stainless guards that are laser cut around Pyrex and like I mean horse or no antler handled TIG setups. There's a certain level of art and flair and pizzazz to TIG that there isn't in other fields. And I don't know how I feel about that really. Like, I mean, they all weld the same at the end of the day. You could argue one way or another about getting the job done, but I get flair. I get wanting to have something that's cool or nice, or oh, I want to walk the cup. I need to get at least a 14. Well, you're not finding a 14 at Canadian Tire. You know what I
No.
mean? Like, that's just not going to happen. Or you're going to have to order it from the States, but you're going to order one single cup and it's going to show up broken. So you got to order an 8-pack and hope that they all show up. But now you're looking at spending $400 for 8 cups. Like, like it's tough. So like for you, that's why I always thought like that's where I go to get, different things. Like that CK Worldwide kit that you guys had, it was like all these different things. It was like, I basically buy one kit and I'm good for a long time, right?
Yep,
I don't even know if you
exactly.
guys sell it anymore. I bought that like 3 years ago, but
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely we
yeah.
do. And yeah, and that's exactly right. And there's just so many different types of TIG welding, different materials people are welding on.
Hmm.
Even something as simple as the thickness of what they're welding will determine, what consumables they're going to run. So it's endless, and you got to think too of like a local welding supplier. Like, are you going to fill your shelves with all of these different options for like the couple of customers that walk in to get it? Like, it doesn't make sense for them either, right? Where for
Hmm.
what we do, it makes perfect sense that, you know, that customer might, like you said, a customer might be in Quebec or something like that, and they have a good local welding supplier. All they buy from us is maybe just their TIG cups because that's the one thing that they can't get locally,
Hmm.
right? So, and that's where we kind of fill the market, and that's what we saw early, that there was definitely an opportunity for that, and that's definitely our bread and butter, is kind of filling the market with those products that doesn't make sense for the local welding supplier to put on the shelf in the first place.
Now, in terms of like what are your next steps? Like you've grown huge. Like your name is from 1 year ago to now. I would say like your name recognition, your brand recognition has gotten significantly bigger. I'm seeing your stickers on like toolboxes and stuff, and that they weren't there a year ago, and that's fantastic. That must fill your heart with glee to know to see that. But sometimes maintaining and growth are the hardest things to do. Like you've gotten to a good level. Now what's your vision? Where do you see this going? What's up next? What's, the next steps for you?
I think for us, a lot of the opportunities that there are in the future are kind of pandemic pending. I think there's a lot
Hmm.
of I think there's a huge appetite for welders to get together for different events, and I think that we could really build something around that. Whether it's like training days or even just like some type of trade shows that people can get together and talk. And I know you guys are doing some great stuff right now. Like I was in on that meeting that Kevin Waugh did a little while ago with their local chapter, just talking about Instagram and stuff. And I think that in the future there's opportunities for everyone to get together in person.
Hmm.
Because welding is very different than some of those other trades we talked about, or like my trade in HVAC. To me, as like kind of like a nerd in HVAC, it's super interesting, but like most people don't care, um, to be honest. However,
Yeah.
welding, people who don't weld are still interested in welding, um,
Yeah.
and it's because it's an industry that crosses so many different industries. Like I said, automotive, hobbyists. You have the art side of it, which is
Hmm.
massive. So it covers such a range of people that I think there's huge opportunities with post pandemic, get-togethers and some type of more in-person events.
Well, we're
And that's
planning out 2 in-person conferences already, 2022, pandemic pending. We
yeah,
got one in at the end of April in Toronto, and then we're FabTech Canwelds in Toronto in June. So
yeah.
you got to sign your company up with us for
Oh
that one.
yeah,
Get a booth there.
it's a good time to do the plug because we got a booth already booked, so we're really hoping that that goes through and we can meet with a lot of our customers in person.
Well, we'll be there, and we're hosting too. So we'll have to maybe, maybe I shouldn't. We'll have to talk about this offline. But start throwing business deals down online. Hey, you know what?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's how business is, man. And that's why I sit in my chair and you sit in your chair. It's because you're always looking, you're always thinking, right? You're always any. And I have this all the time with staff over the years. I've had so many great staff that I've worked, and some of them have gone on to start their own businesses, and so proud of them. But one of the things that I've always noticed is that in staff meetings, as a boss, you gotta listen because sometimes you have a staff member be like, "Oh, I got this idea. It's stupid. Whatever. Don't. No, no, no. Say it.
Mhm.
Say it." Because then they'll be like, "Oh, well, what about blah blah blah?" And be like, "Let's actually roll on that and see how that works." Because you know, so many of the awesome initiatives that I've helped produce in my life were not my idea.
Yeah.
They were somebody else's idea underneath me or parallel to me or around me that I was just like, yo, that what you just said is money. Let's do that. I'll help you do that because I am a workaholic and I'll put in the 16 hours a day to make sure this happens, but it's 100% your idea. Like, and that's so important, to in business world, just like right before we started, never say no, right?
Never say no, and just like you said, as the entrepreneur, hire great people and let them and empower them to do their job. And like I said,
Mm.
listen to what they have to say because that's what a successful company is. It's a group of people working together. It's not the business owner themselves trying to do it all. That never works.
Yeah, if you think you're the smartest person in the company, there's at least one person who doesn't think you're the smartest or because there's a different saying about that I heard once, being like, if you're the smartest person in the company, it's not a good company. But then someone else said it to me, and they're like, well, then you're probably not. And I was like, oh, burn. You're probably true.
That's
Probably
probably
true.
yep. That sounds about right.
Because I know I've badmouthed people in the past, and then they turn out to be really smart. It's like, damn it, that was actually a really good idea that guy had. Dang. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. All right. So we're coming up on the end of the show here, man. This has been a blast. I am curious to see, do you have thoughts? I'm picking a little bit more this question because I didn't really get an answer, pandemic pending. But, are you looking at maybe Western stores? Are you looking at, maybe like outlets? Are you going to keep this online just with the warehouse for the next while? Like what can people give people a teaser? What's going on here in the world of CWS?
I think for us, the next step is certainly a larger location. We do have an order counter
Hmm.
where people can come to our warehouse and place their orders in person, but we really don't have the space for like a proper showroom. And I know a lot of people come and are like hoping, it's impossible for us to ever do a showroom because we sell so many products. Like it'd be like walking
Hmm.
into like a Costco type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but
It'd be nice
but
to have a showcase of a
of
product or
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. Have some pieces of equipment kind of sitting there for people to see. So something like that would be a cool next step that we're kind of working on and looking at how we can make that happen. And then, like you said, Western Canada is a massive market. We have some awesome customers from Western Canada, and if they spend enough and they get free shipping, typically they don't have to worry about the shipping costs. But if they're trying to buy something small, the shipping costs can be quite high to get something across the country. Like it's amazing. We can often ship something to like Florida for less than we can ship something to British Columbia. Just the logistics of our country that there's just not as much going east west as much as there's products going north south.
Hmm.
But having like a Alberta or BC warehouse would certainly alleviate some of that. But that's a huge step
That's
because
a huge commitment. Yeah.
again, getting back to what I said, it's all about the people that you have, and hiring great people and managing them is a huge task. So it's one thing to set up a second location, but to have great people in that location and make sure they're managed well is a real challenge. So that'd be a long term thing that we'd certainly be looking at, but we'd want to take the baby steps first and do it right.
Yeah, managing remote has been a huge lesson for me. This is the first job I've ever had where I manage remote. And none of my staff lives in the same province that I live in.
Hmm.
And that's, I think we've been very successful, but it's definitely a learning curve to
Yeah.
try to manage staff well without seeing them. Or, but I'm that type of boss, and I've been criticized for it, but I like to like buy coffees and a box of donuts every now and then. And I just like that vibe. I like try to keep it light, and we're all here to make money for each other, but it doesn't need to be angry. We can, just we can be chill, and I'll buy lunches for the whole office every now and then, but I can't do that now. Like, it's not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, like and so it's hard to show appreciation remote. It's hard to show camaraderie remote. So that's been a learning curve for me, and that is tricky. You want to open up, and that this is your baby. You're basically opening up your baby for someone else, and you don't want it to fall on its face, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, you kind of said it all right there. And another thing for me that has been really great challenge is managing people in general. I mean, I went from
Hmm.
my background where I was essentially on my own out on the road, and I would deal with some very high end clients, and I was really experienced and successful with dealing with these high end clients, and especially in very stressful situations when they're dealing with expensive equipment that wasn't working properly.
Hmm.
But dealing with people like your own employees is a whole different animal, and I'm enjoying it big time. But it's a whole different ball game than what I was doing in the past too. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is, and life is just what it is. You just roll, right? So, I'm sure everyone that's listening and that's been on your website is very happy with the work that you guys have committed, you and your wife, into building your brand and your company, and you guys are doing a great job, man.
Appreciate that big time.
All right, so with the end of the show, and if you've heard the episodes, I'm going to ask it. It comes every time, but let's connect this to your life now. Let's say there's a young person out there, late 20s, have been in the trades a few years, but they kind of been thinking about business, and they've been looking at maybe doing something online, and trying to set up some type of online market, or reselling, or sales platform. What piece of advice would you give them, to help them get their idea off the ground in the virtual space?
Think small at first, and think of a way that you can do something without investing too much into it, and see what happens. Let's say your number's 5 grand or 10 grand that you're willing to lose. Come up with a plan that is within your budget, and try it on the side. Don't go all in, and see what happens. And if it works, then you take it to the next step, maybe 25,000, maybe 50,000. But if you think on day one that you're going to have a multi-million-dollar business, um, keep dreaming. It doesn't. Maybe some people it works that way, but not for 99% of people. It's the best thing to do is kind of dip a toe in, take it slow, and kind of learn the hard lessons early. Don't learn them when you have everything on the line. Is my advice for people trying something. But the other thing too is any idea you have can work. So give it a
Hmm.
try. Like, don't be afraid to try something, because like we said at the beginning of the podcast, I've seen people who make money doing things you would never imagine there'd be any business in, and they're doing it. They're selling pylons to construction companies, or they're, you know, I don't know, digging
I t-
digging
I
like they
took
got
a
like an excavation
yeah, for
company, and
sure.
all they do is like trees. Like, they only plant
Yeah,
trees, and
yeah,
they're busy as can be. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
any idea you have can work. You just got to think it through, and maybe don't go all in 100% on day one.
I took a business class years ago, and they were talking about scaling, the concept of scaling in business, and scaling up and scaling down. There's a time to do one or the other depending on how things are rolling and certain products and blah blah blah. And the concept of like how do you gauge success came up, and the instructor was like, if you guys ever feel down about yourself, or you're ever worried about where you're going, just go to the dollar store. Just go to the dollar store. Behind every piece of garbage in that building, there's a millionaire. Behind every piece of garbage in that store, there's a millionaire, because every dollar store in all of North America has that piece of garbage sitting on that shelf, and some guy built them all. That piece, that rubber ball, that stupid squeaky toy, the mismatched slipper, whatever junk is in that store, there's a millionaire behind it. So it's not all about, winning. It's about being at the right place, the right time, right plan. There's a lot of steps involved to being successful. So I was like, man, I'll never forget that. And it's funny. I'll think about that when I'm at the dollar store. I'm like, I'll be like, God damn, that guy's probably rich. Stupid little toy soldier. Arm falls off in 3 seconds, but whatever. I bought it. Like,
Yeah. Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, you guys don't sell products where the arms fall off, so for sure, make sure that for the people that are listening, make sure you go check out CanadaWeldingSupply.ca. They got a really easy website. They also do gift cards because I know I just bought some of my stuff, some gift cards from there, and it's really easy to use, very intuitive website, and they got great deals all the time. Also, shameless plug, the CWB Association. We have a membership deal. We're in partnerships. We've gone into cahoots with the Canadian Welding Supply, and we have special deals that get released on the monthly only through our website. You get a discount code you got to go to our website for. So, you go to CWBAssociation.org, go to the membership. If you're not a member already, sign up. It's free. And then you can check out the deals there, and they'll give you deals that are rotating monthly. And always feel free to reach out to them. They have a great support line too. So
Thanks for having me on, Max. I really appreciate it. It was great.
awesome, man. And, take care. And I'm going to be out in Ontario a few times this year. So I'm going to see if I can rip by your store. And are you ever there, like in person?
All the time. Yep. Every day.
All right. Well, maybe I'll hit you up and I'll see if I can spin by and actually maybe bring you a coffee or something.
Anytime.
Or a beer. or 10. Okay. No,
that sounds good too.
All right, man. Well, I'll talk to you later. And thanks for all the listeners for tuning in.
We hope you enjoyed the show.